I'm Jamie Seeker, and this is What It Takes. Each episode, I sit down with real business owners to talk about their journey, the wins, the challenges, and everything in between. Let's dive in. Welcome to What It Takes, the podcast where we dive deep into the journeys of business owners who've built something incredible. And today we are joined by Dave Benton, the founder of Metajive, a top-tier digital agency that has collaborated with global brands like Nike, Red Bull, and Google. Dave's journey is a true testament to what it takes to turn passion into a thriving business. What started as a one-man freelance operation has grown into an award-winning agency known for its innovative approach to design and technology. But this success didn't happen overnight. It took vision, resilience, and the ability to adapt in an ever-changing industry. So how did he do it? What challenges did he face along the way? And what can other entrepreneurs learn from his experience? Let's dive in. Dave, welcome to the show.
Hi, Jamie. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. So take us back to the beginning. What inspired you to start Metajive?
Well, I actually never wanted to start a company. I It was a placeholder website that was leftover remnant from a project I did in college, and I just started using it to host my portfolio. I moved to San Francisco intent to get a job. I ended up meeting a lot of people looking for jobs, and it was always like, I don't have a job, but I have a contract. I don't have a job, but I have a contract. And that just got the start. And then eventually I needed some help. I needed a little more help. And, 20 years and a lot of twists and turns later, we're here today.
Well, yeah, let's talk a little bit about those twists and turns. In the early days, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced, and how did you kind of overcome them to get to where you are today?
Well, I always say I've made every mistake in the book. So there's not a single twist and a single turn over the 20 years. I think there's been a lot of really conscious decisions made over time to keep progressing, to keep the business moving, to even commit that we wanted it to be a business, right? 2008 was rough. 2015 was really rough. There's certain peaks and valleys in there. So as we just kept moving through the business, we just made what we thought was the next right decision.
Oh, I love that. The next right decision. Yeah. And I've
Yep.
talked about that before with some other owners and stuff. They're like, it's just whatever the next right decision is. But what was the turning point where you knew Metajive was going to be something big?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to take credit for the next right decision. That's Oprah's line. So,
Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh my gosh. Yes, it's been a long time, but yeah.
but it's good advice.
It
Um,
is. It is.
yeah, so I just want to set that straight.
Thank
But
you.
it is good advice, right? Just make the next right decision. That's and put one foot in front of the other. Um, so what were the biggest decisions that I
Yeah, what
made?
was that turning point like that you knew, okay, we're gonna do something big with this?
I think the first time I knew it was going to be big was when we got a long-term retainer client, like our first one, and we stopped going project to project and started really building relationships.
Oh, that's fun. That's awesome. And you've worked with some major brands too. So how did you land those big clients and like what advice do you have for others that might be kind of looking to do the same?
So I think landing the major brands is a really interesting thing because you always go out and you go, I need the big brand, I need the big retainer, I need this. But it's a journey of relationships. So building a business like ours where you have to be a trusted advisor, you have to be good at your craft, a lot of you have to be able to deliver, right? A lot of rigor in the business. But in order to get to the bigger brands, you need relationships with people at those bigger brands. So there's kind of two routes. Um, the first would probably be much more direct, not the one I took, where you actually go figure out how to go build those relationships, network in those environments, send email to people at Fortune 500 companies, things like that. The other is you just keep working with people in your 20s and 30s until you get old And then those people have jobs at important companies. So out of the blue, a few years ago, in fact, every major relationship we've had has come from someone we've done work with at a different stage in our career. So about 2 years ago, um, shout out Gene Peck, also in Phoenix. We had done work about 8 years prior in San Diego, fairly small work. He's incredible. We got along really well. He moved on in his career and eventually ended up at HP. He came in and said, "Hey, I really want to bring you on. I want to have another agency in our roster. I want to have some people I really trust to work with." And he brought us on, and it really gave us a moment to rise as an agency and show that we could do work with the top tier in the tough environment for one of the largest manufacturers in the world. And that entire project or multiple projects, multiple year relationship all came from someone I had worked with 8 years in advance. Same story with Bank of America and T-Mobile. So it's very rare that someone calls out of the blue, and it's always you were referred by someone or it's I know you and we did this thing 5, 10, 20 years ago. Um, so that's a majority of basically everything that we've ever done.
I would say in the beginning of my company as well, that's been, it was built off referrals and just doing good work and having them talk about that good work and referrals. And it took, I think, probably like 5 years, maybe even longer than that, to kind of shift over to where we were kind of getting clients and things like that on our own. But I think that you make a really good point that we actually don't think much about or talk much about when it comes to like building business is, sometimes you just need to put your head down, do really, really good work, focus on the relationships with people that you're working with. And yeah, when you get to the point, I mean, you put it out there that we're old now once you pass your 20s and 30s. But
Yeah.
yes, when you get old and you start to look around you and you go, oh, wow, how did I get older than at what point did that shift, right? Like I used to be the young buck coming up, but then
Yeah.
you do look around and you're like, yeah, a lot of the people that we're working with, whether it be clients or people internally that have moved on to do different things, or people that you've even collaborated with on projects or whatnot. Yeah, I mean, you tend to really um, stick in their minds if you've done something that had that gave somebody a good experience or put out a good product or whatever it is. So I think that's something that's not actually often talked about, but I do think it's something that we've all done to build our businesses. And I think I love what you were saying about the relationship side of it is it's not just about like going and networking and finding the right person in the company because that's certainly valuable and that does work. That wasn't your path though, right? Like you
Um,
created the relationships kind of internally along the way and now it's turned into, business for you.
yeah. And I would say actually, even the people who I'm not gonna say wasn't the best experience, but the people you went in the trenches with, the people we got a bad spec from a media company and had 2 days to turn around a huge project when we got the right information, are the people who ultimately remember you went the extra mile. Those are the people who continue to work with you. And it's again, it's not about being taken advantage of because I think there's a sense of that and you need to advocate for yourself in business, but you also need to be committed to the work you're ultimately doing. And I think it's a really interesting place in the world today where there's multiple different generations as we're talking about. And I think the alphas and the Z's are doing some amazing things. I think the way they're leaning into entrepreneurial journey at a totally different rate um, than I did or my peers did. The way that they're kind of questioning everything is really interesting, and there's a ton of really great conversations around that. I think one of the things that's most thought provoking is the change in the transaction in value and the way they're pushing the world forward and um, advocating for themselves. And there's ways when that's really healthy, and there's ways when it's not healthy. Um, and there's a whole conversation about value pricing where people really need to actually do the work to understand the value they're creating. And it shouldn't be a one-way street to just say, I want more from my client, I want more money from my client, and I want for that, as opposed to actually understand what you're creating and how you're impacting that business and what it is. Um,
Well, yeah, that's an interesting point too. Like you're as an owner trying to scale your business, but I think you kind of had a really good point is maintaining that creativity and balancing growth and keeping your work innovative. So you're talking about, okay, we've got a whole generation that understands this like philosophy and is kind of on board that way. But then there's that other balance of like, but you actually have to do the work. You can't just understand the work.
yeah.
You gotta at some point put your head down, get it done. And I think that's why, when you're in the trenches with people, they really kind of see what kind of person you are and whatever challenges you are. But let's talk a little bit about like that balance between creativity and doing that work and also trying to like build and scale and grow. How do you balance that? How do you kind of manage navigating through that?
Yeah. I mean, right. There's working in the business, there's working on the business.
Said that all the
I,
time.
I love both. Like, and in fact, I probably love working in the business more than I love working on the business.
Most
Like,
business owners, I would argue, absolutely, it's same thing.
because we don't start businesses to start businesses. We start business to practice our craft, to do the things we love, to push forward, especially in like this digital world we're in that's constantly changing. And I think that's where it's really exciting to just keep going and understand this is going to change. Right now, we're in a massive revolution with AI and how that's going to impact everything and how we're going to take advantage. And trying to skate where the puck is going is is hard now. It's hard. It's probably harder than it's ever been. It's a faster change that we're going to have as society. It's a faster change as as an agency, and really question like how are we going to add value in this world when ultimately there's going to be a few people that are going to own the main models, and then we're going to be able to innovate and build on top of that. Um, And so how are we going to leverage that for our clients, for our partners as like an ultimate business unlock?
Yeah, like that was actually going to be my question for you is like, how do you keep that creativity? How do you stay ahead of the trends and keep your business evolving?
I mean, I think how do you keep the creativity is I'm naturally excited about the work. So if I'm paying attention to the nuance, I'm paying attention to the details, I'm driving what we make forward, um, which is its own challenge because you need to make sure you're headed in the right direction and forward's actually forward and forward's not spinning in circles waiting or pushing for the next big innovation. But how do we keep the business going forward and driving the innovation is we have an entire team here that is so dedicated to the craft, so dedicated to every detail of whether it's design or technology. Our project management team is just dialed in and keeps everything moving. And it's actually one of the secrets to how we provide like the great client experience, because we really empower the project managers. And I think knowing that is happening and that things are operational and you have standard operating procedures and all that fun stuff that you have to do as a business once you get to a decent scale happens. Um, and it doesn't happen without effort, but there you kind of come to multiple inflection points where it's like, I need to go fix this. I need to fix our onboarding. I need to fix how this works. We're looking at some digital infrastructure right now. Like it all comes around. So whether it's your payroll system, your HRIS, your wiki, your offering deck, your tech security, right? Like all of those things come into plays, and you don't have to change everything at once. And in fact, it's better not to change everything at once. But it's I think I feel like I'm going to keep coming back to the same answer. It's just like this is a journey of one step at a time. And if you're going to build a business, you have to have a vision, you have to know where you're going. But you also have to be able to know why you're going there in case the destination is going to change and you're going to need to start building more digital tools and less websites, more apps, um, more email. We got into CRM a few years ago, and we got into it from a place of frustration where we were working with these clients on 6, 12, 18 month projects, strategy, design, technology, and then, a different partner was handling CRM because that's generally growth marketing territory. And that's definitely not where we live. Uh, but we wanted to make sure that there was care and thought and the same design execution and the same level of development execution was taken care of in that space. And now we're doing some of those projects. We're doing it for one of the largest financial institutions in the world right now. So um, that came out of frustration from working with small clients and then saying, no, we can do that, and starting to do that.
Yeah, I love that. And it's ever evolving and changing. But I think the key points that I'm kind of taking from what you're saying is knowing your mission, your why, knowing your vision, so you have a direction, and making sure that your team and everybody that you have on board is on the same page. And so when you have that, it just makes it easier to kind of make those tweaks as you come to some of those things. Oh, we need to update that, or we need to tweak that, or we need to change that. And that's how you just keep going. Like you said, you put one foot instead of the in front of the other. And I think entrepreneurship anyway, and I think as people start to get into their first, second, third decade of doing things, you'll see it. There's always highs and lows, and you talked about that cycle, right? You talked about different dates. We typically have those same dates
Yeah.
that we were looking at, like, oh, I remember back way back when. Oh, I remember that time, and you just have to keep going and you have to just keep figuring it out and pushing through. So, can you share a moment where you felt like, okay, I'm done. I'm ready to quit. And then obviously you push through because you're still here today. So, what was that decision like and what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very real. That's probably 2015, where I talked about we've lost our largest client. Um, they were over 50% of our business, and it was just a massive, massive setback. Um, and we essentially had to rebuild the whole business. The business was down to myself, my wife, who's our COO, and one project manager
Wow.
for the whole business, and then our development partners who we had for 15 years and still work with them today, actually. But I actually started exploring, looking at jobs, looking what was out there, figuring it out. Um, had a few conversations about, we use air quotes here and say mergers, where it was kind of acqui-hire with some incentives, and there's some pretty interesting options available, but nothing felt right, or it would require a move or something that was different than I envisioned, right? Like going to New York was just not in the cards for me ever. So I think when I look at things like that and I just look through those time periods, um it was kind of out of necessity to just keep making it work, keep figuring it out. And then luckily the phone rang, and the relationships I'd built over the years provided a new opportunity to use it as a new cornerstone and rebuild. I'd say probably it's been three kind of pivotal moments that were like, we took this business down to the studs
Yeah.
multiple times. So it's scary. It's super scary. And then as you get older, and it's not even just lifestyle being a little better because, right, some of that, a mortgage or whatever becomes something you have to pay. Um, but I think as you become a parent, as you become married, it changes your relationship um, with life, with money, and it becomes about security in a different way, uh, and it just changes what you have to do, and in some ways it's like you want to take less big swings because you're going to go for stability, right? You're going to go for um, retainer clients as opposed to huge projects. You're gonna shift for towards um, just building something more stable.
Yeah.
It's inherent.
I'd have to agree with that. And I think, your phase of life, the experience that you've had already, and I think sometimes it's being through some of those peaks and valleys and just knowing that, hey, it's all going to cycle through. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so it just makes your ability to, when you experience it again, just go through it easier. I mean, it's easier to manage, and the highs are not going to stay high forever, and you kind of know that, and you plan for that. And I had a saying, like, you plan for the rainy days in the sunniest times, right? Like
Wow.
that's when I was getting all my line of credit set up. That's when I was getting all of everything that I needed to do, was when I didn't need it. And thank God, because then it was like I within a matter of time, maybe a few years, you are going to see that. And I think if you've been in business for any number of years, you will get to the point where you tap into every single resource you have, and you just kind of double down and say, hey, at some point, like, we know what we're doing, and we know that we're going to get through this too. And hopefully the work that we've done, you know, previously is going to catch up. And, you reap what you sow. It's not like this karma thing where whatever you put out there, like, the world's going to give it back. That's not actually what happens. It's like, if you plant a seed, it's going to grow. It's just a matter of time. When that's going to happen, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you're talking about 2015, and I can imagine, you know, that prepared you for 2020.
Yeah.
Had you not gone through that in 2015, gone down to your studs, reestablish that foundation, decide how you're going to rebuild, I'd imagine, how was 2020 for you? Was that like an explosion of like, because I know it was going on in digital marketing at the time, and I think it was kind of like everything kind of shifted to there.
Yeah, digital was it was crazy. So 2020 was a wild time. I mean, I actually think whenever you meet someone new, within 20 minutes, like the nation is still healing, the world's still healing. Within 20 minutes, someone's going to tell you their COVID story. And my story was pretty different than everyone else's. When everyone else went home for quote unquote 2 weeks to figure it out and watch Netflix and just kind of wait it out, uh, I started working like 100 hours a week. We were losing clients left, right, and center. We lost 75% of our previous year's revenue in 3 weeks.
Wow.
Long-term retainer clients, people we'd worked with for 5 and 7 years, just said, we don't know what's happening in our business. We're just pausing all.
Yep.
We didn't see a net new project for 6 months.
Wow.
And at the same time, we had employees, partners, people we cared about, kind of have their lives implode, and you feel for them as that's happening. But whether they separated from the business, how that happened, how people were dealing with it, I could tell you I was 100% wrong in who I thought was ride or die and who wasn't, who I thought was
Yeah.
all at work and home and who wasn't. And I think the biggest difference in it was the people with fuller lives, right? Older families, houses, things like that, had more distraction. And the people who didn't were like digging in and going, I'm available, so I'm able to just dig in and stay focused and whatever you need. And if I work an extra 10 hours this week, it's fine because I'm not going anywhere.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah. And then the second half of the year, we got really lucky. One project that was kind of mentioned to us very early, and I was just like, yeah, that's never coming back. Came back, and it was the first project we saw in 6 months, which, just for context for everyone, our average project is 3 to 6 months. So by the end of this, we had one monster client and not much else going on.
Wow.
Then this new project came. It was a really exciting project. It was about taking New York Fashion Week and making an online experience. And that job was able to give us some momentum, to have something to talk about, to show work, to pay some bills, and continue to work, and then come out of that out the other end. And that went into our T-Mobile um, project, which was a massive project where we ended up growing. We hired like 12 people in 3 months
Oh,
or something, which
so
basically
cool.
doubled the company. But it was, we went something like from 18 to 7, and then started back up really fast. And we were like 22 and we're like 35 now.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's great. Well, this podcast is called What It Takes, and you've certainly touched on a bunch of different points on what it takes. So, in your experience, just to kind of sum up, if you're going to talk to somebody about what it actually takes to run a business, what would you say to them?
I'd say it takes the willingness to be 100% accountable. You
Mm,
have to be responsible in a different way and accept the responsibility for every person in your organization, and know that ultimately it's your name on the line. It's your commitment you're making to your clients. It's your commitment you're making to your employees. And you really need to own that. And then that gives a lot of perspective to to help make decisions when someone's working out, when someone's not working out, when to say no to an opportunity, um, and when to dial in. And still today, right, 20 years in this business, I was up till 11:30 working on a review that I took off someone else's plate, because they needed it. And I'd say last week was the same. So I'm still very much in the trenches, but there's been a ton of reward too
yeah.
that comes from it.
I like that though, that you just the willingness to be 100% accountable. I mean, at the end of the day, it's your business, and in our experience in working with a lot of business owners, I think that that's kind of a journey to get to. I don't think we automatically just start doing that because it's so much easier to say, oh, well, why didn't you, or why didn't this, or you know what I mean? So, I like that a lot. I like that as it does. It takes 100% accountability and willingness to just kind of look in the mirror and say, hey, this all lands on me. So what am I willing to do? And it just changes, it shifts, I think, a little bit when you're able to own that.
It does, and it's also really helpful to explain that to people of why they need to come through with you, why you're going to hold them accountable. Because ultimately, to scale, you need delegation, you need trust, you need um, all of those things. But yeah, it's a journey, and just knowing, right. And ultimately, if you think it's not all going to fall on you, trust me, when it goes bad,
Yes.
no one is going to hold the bag for you.
Nope. No, and like you said, you learn real fast who your ride or die is, and it's not ever who you think. And that's the craziest part about, just being in business a long time and seeing it. And so if you have that mentality anyway, where the buck stops with me and starts with me, then it really just kind of all of those things that happen in business, whether people stay by your side, whether they kind of fall away, it makes it, I think, just a much more mature way to handle those things. Like it doesn't hit you the same way as it did if you kind of are in it with somebody else. Like, oh, like I thought we were no, I mean at the end of the day, this is my thing. So I'm not nobody's ever gonna be more loyal to my business than me. Right. And if I have that mentality and everybody else along the way, it just kind of cherry on top, right? Like that's the icing on the cake. It helps to have that perspective all the way through. But yeah, I think that's a great point there. But Dave, this has been such an insightful conversation. I want to talk so much more and go down deeper, but your journey from freelancer to leading a globally recognized agency, it's inspiring. The lessons that you've shared today, I think it's going to resonate with so many entrepreneurs, definitely with me. But before we wrap up, where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about Metajive?
Yeah, I think metajive.com is the easiest. We're Metajive on every social except Instagram, because I think we lost the login. So we're Metajive_design on Instagram. But
I hate that. I think we've done that a time or two as well.
yeah. And then I think my LinkedIn is even linkedin.com/Metajive. So it's pretty easy um, to find us. We're around. Thank you so
Awesome.
much,
Awesome.
Jamie.
Yeah,
This was
thank you for
great.
Thanks for joining us today. And to our listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. And we'll see you next time on What It Takes. Would you or someone you know like to be featured on this podcast? Our applications are now open. Apply today at seekersolution.com and click on the podcast link to get started.